Ediann Productions present The Ediann Show, Episode 3. Welcome back to The Ediann Show. I'm your host, Matty Ionelli, and here's another great story. This is the second story, although this is Episode 3. Here we go. Welcome to Matty's blog. Tuesday, September 1, 2009. A story I wrote about the Ketteler family in my black and white book. When I was about 3 years old, I would ask my mom or dad to get me a black and white book to write my stories and drawings. I also like to put my stickers on the pages and on the cover. I must have wrote at least 10 stories with about 6 or more pages for each story. My stories were about a made-up family called the Ketteler family, and they were from a made-up town called Kettelerville in the state of Ohio. The characters in the book were Mr. Mike Ketteler, who was George's father. George was the little boy in the story, and he had a lot of cool adventures with his family. Mrs. Susan Ketteler was George and Kim's mother, and she always made sure that they were always taken good care of. The grandpa was Hanton Ketteler, and he had a place to live in the Ketteler's house, in an apartment made for him and his wife. The grandma was Newton Ketteler, and she lived with Hanton, and they were happy living with the Ketteler family. They once took a vacation to New York City to visit all the nice tall buildings. The one that they went to visit was the Empire State Building, which was their most favorite building in New York City. The Ketteler family had a good time in New York City, and Mrs. Susan Ketteler liked the stores. George has a little sister, and her name is Kimberly Ketteler, and she liked to play with her dolls and play games with her older brother George. They had a short stay in New York for 3 days and then had to head back home to Kettelerville, Ohio, as George had to get ready for school and father had to go back to work. Their drive back to Ohio was about 8 to 10 hours, and George always loved the rides as he would make up adventures in his book that he always brought with him on trips. For the long ride home, the family would have to make stops along the way to make a pit stop and to eat if they were hungry and to fill up their car with gas. Little Kimmy liked to listen to her favorite songs on the trip. Sometimes the family would sing and George would continue writing his adventures. One of George's stories was about when he went on a field trip with his class to SeaWorld, and he got to see the dolphins and the seals, and he even got splashed and started to laugh because it felt good to get wet. He always wrote stories to keep himself busy so he wouldn't be bored. Another story he liked to write about was when he visited the auto plant where they made cars, and he always enjoyed seeing how the cars were made and what they looked like when they were finished. There were so many workers on the line, including men and women. He would always dream about becoming a car designer. George always had a big imagination for his age and always enjoyed writing, as this gave him great joy and he could do anything or be anybody. I always wondered how he got all his ideas. Along the ride home, he would write maybe 5 stories, and he would make them exciting with tales of adventure. He didn't like to share his stories, as he felt he always had to improve them, but he liked the feeling of writing a story. He promised one day when he felt ready to, he would put it in a book and read it to his kids when he would be a grown-up. George was shy, so his writings would make him feel good because his stories would take him to different places, and he would always be the center of the story like a hero. I like George because he is fun and he knows how to make me feel good when I read his adventures. This is a pretty long story, so are you okay with that? George was shy, so his writing would make him feel good. That is why I write this story about George and the Ketteler family, as there are so many stories to tell because George loves to write and the family likes to go on trips, so I can write many stories. Another story George wrote was about when they took a train ride to the country to visit relatives, and George pretended the train was like a time machine bringing them back in time as he waited for them to arrive at the relatives. George always wanted to visit his relatives and was all excited, and he enjoyed looking out the window. It was time for George to close his book and sleep for a while, as his mom said he should rest because they would be home in a couple of hours. And Kimmy was sleeping for a while. So George closed his eyes, closed his book, and fell asleep. Before he knew it, Mom woke him and Kimmy up, and Dad carried them up to bed where they both had smiles on their faces. Mom gave them a kiss goodnight and they went to sleep. The end. Maddie Iannelli, helped by Dad. Thank you for reading with me. 0 comments. And now we're signing off from the Ediann Show, from Maddie's blog to your host, Maddie Iannelli. Credits. The end. This video has been an Ediann production.